Good evening, everyone. My name is Eric Agose. It is my humble privilege to be part of this conversation. It's one of those conversations that is so close to my heart, and so I'm looking forward to a positive engagement from all of us, so that I'm actually here more to learn and relearn. Those are usually my three principles. So I hope that it's going to be a very interactive session, and I hope you have fun at the end of it. So by way of introduction, my name is Eric Kagose. I have been in the HR space for 10 years plus now. In terms of my academic qualification, my undergraduate was in strategic management. Then after campus, I joined HR. I think that was the best decision. Then I pursued a diploma in HR. Then currently I decided to go back to school, so that I'm pursuing an MBA. And then for me to be a professional HR, I had to be a member of IHRM. So that is my academic background. In terms of passion and interest, number one, I love conversations. And I love moderating events. I love talking to people. It's never a dull day for me in HR. And then, of course, I love career. When everybody grows, I love it. So that's why I'm actually in this platform. And again, I have partnered with organizations to do career coaching and mentorship. Every opportunity I get to have a conversation about career, I will always come up and take the stage. So it is a strength or sometimes a weakness. And so a number of areas in HR that I've been able to deal with. So in case you need any of those, please, we can touch base. And I've also put in my contacts there, just in case you need a one-on-one conversation on anything from a career perspective, from a professional mentorship perspective, for you, if you have an event that you want me to moderate for you. So that is me, and that is my photo. That's how I look on a good day. So yeah, I also run a podcast relating to career growth, which is called Conversations with Eric Kagose. So that is basically about Eric Kagose. The theme of the day is success in an interview. And this is one discussion that we can have on and on and on again. And we can never exhaust this conversation because, as I said, all of us, we are in this conversation for growth. And one of the ways to grow in terms of our professional experience or our professional platform is we have to move from one organization to the other. And if you don't move from one organization to the other, then it means even within the same organization, you are trying to scale up your staff so that you move to the next level. And most organizations, whether internally or externally, the interview process is kind of a must. It's not avoidable. And so from an introduction perspective, I put these three sentences here to start as of. Number one, the interview is a preparation or is a culmination of all the efforts you've been doing before the interview. So your preparation for the interview does not start rather when you're called for the interview. It starts way before even you knew that you're going to be working in a certain organization. Some people decide and take a back seat and decide and say, I'm not going to do anything, I'll just sit and relax. And then one day when they get tired of an employer, or now one day you are in the job market, especially for those of us who have finished our undergraduate and now we want to move into the job market. Now when you are now clearing your fourth year, you've graduated and you've taken those beautiful photos and have that bash that your parents have organized for you, that's when you think and realize, oops, I need to start looking for jobs. I need to know what interview is all about. I'm sorry. It starts way before you even thought of that you're going to work in an interview. And how does this make sense? It's because every day when you're learning something, every day when you're learning a skill, every day when you're trying to improve yourself, in the many avenues that you find, it can be in a leadership position, when you're learning to deal with people as a leader, that is probably even not even related to the job that you're going to be applying for. It can be in a project that you are doing in school, at home, in church, in the community, that is not even related anyway to an interview that you're going to do 5 or 6 years later. They may not be related. But in the process when you're involved in a project, the process when you're involved in leadership position, the process when you're involved in an activities that build yourself, you're already preparing for an interview that you're not sure where you're going to do it. So most graduates or most people that I talk to, sometimes I do CV reviews. So sometimes I ask someone, okay, what have you been doing with your life now that you're starting off your career? What did you do in campus? Nothing. You just used to go to class and come to the to hostel. Yes. Any leadership position? Nothing. Any activity that you have done? Nothing. And you have done completely nothing. So you're like, okay, so how are you even going to relate when you're coming to the job space? Because the interview will ask you some of the questions that does not necessarily have to come up from a previous professional experience. You understand? So that is number one. Number two, when job searching, put yourself in the mind of the recruiter by asking yourself what the organization needs and try to put yourself in the position of to answer that question. So if you want to work for Deloitte is your dream company, and Deloitte decides to advertise. And so Deloitte is advertising because they need something in you. Not you specifically as an individual. It's because they need something in you. And some of these things that most recruiters will do is a job profile. If it is a graduate trainee program, they will give you a profile. They say that we are looking for someone who has this and this and this and this and these qualifications. Most of the time when we are doing our CVs and when you're preparing ourselves for the interview, we forget that we are supposed to be adding into the value of the organization. We are supposed to be satisfying the need of the organization. So most of us, we do our cover letters, we do our CVs thinking of ourselves, which is a bit not very accurate. Because the employer is looking for you to fulfill a certain need that they have. So you, when you're crafting your cover letter, you should be asking yourself, what skills does Deloitte need? And how am I able to demonstrate these things that the organization needs? So that when you're having a formal conversation, or even when you're applying for that job, or when you're uploading your CV, you're mirroring what the organization needs. So me as Eric sitting on the other side of the organization, trying to see what profile I'm getting, I'm able to match your profile and what I need. The need of the organization supersedes your need. Then the third one, which is not very encouraging, but I'll say it, but I'll expound it in our conversation as we continue. However exceptional you perform in the interview, you may still not get the job. But the reason why we are in this conversation is we minimize or we try and eliminate as much as possible the things that may not make us be called for that interview, or the things that may not make us not to excel in that interview. But as you are aware, the interview is a very subjective process. Most organizations try to eliminate the subjectiveness of the interview process by putting in some structures like personality test, aptitude test, and so forth, and so on and so forth. But at the end of the day, if it's a panel interview, you will sit and you're going to meet some people, and those people are the ones who are going to determine your fate. So, and these people, for some reason, however excellent you perform, they may not feel your vibe. So this is, I'm coming from a point of mental health perspective, because most of us, we get so burned out when we go for interview 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and no job is, no success is coming out of it, and we start stressing. This statement, the last statement, is for those of us who have gone for 1,000,001 interviews but have not yet found an opportunity. But this evening, we are talking about how do we eliminate some of the possible risks that might make us not to excel in an interview. So why should we prepare for interviews? You prepared for yourself by ensuring that you are up to date with your skills. You've been learning, you've been grooming yourself, you've been growing, you've been deliberately upscaling yourself so that you prepare yourself for your dream job. The reason why it is important that you need to practice or you need to prepare is, number one, you will boost your confidence. I have been preparing for this conversation ever since Sheila requested me to come for this conversation, and it has always been in my mind every single day, trying to think about what do these people want to hear, what can I do, how does the presentation look like, what slides do I put on board. So it is the same thing with an interview. So when you're in an interview and you know that you've prepared for the interview, your confidence is boosted, so you're able to tackle questions the way they are supposed to be tackled. Number two, impressive responses. I'm sure all of us are aware of TED videos or TED shows. And I was listening to one lady called Angela Duckworth. Angela Duckworth is the writer of the book called Grit. And she was once a time given an opportunity to prepare, to talk about grit in TED shows. And as she narrates in the book Grit, how she used to prepare for that conversation, she went ahead to do a mock interview to prepare for what she was supposed to say. And she went over and over and over and over that conversation 1,000,001 time in front of the children, in front of the husband, in front of friends, in front of colleagues. They were able to tell her, no, here you've stammered here, you've said a number of times, this point has not come out clearly well, you need to work on this and this and this. And so when you prepared and you've prepared yourself for the interview, your responses are going to be exact, precise, and up to the point. Then, of course, competitive advantage, because everyone was prepared. It is the nature of life. If you read for your exam and someone else does not read for their exam, there is a high likelihood that you're going to perform better than them, isn't it? It is normal life. So by preparing for an interview, you boost your confidence, number one, and then you have a competitive edge over all those other people who probably have not prepared, or you just become better, because when you are in the process of preparing yourself, you get insights, you read and learn about what needs to be done. You understand? Then you get a personalized approach. I'll be expounding these things as we continue so that I can link them together. You get a personalized approach to doing things. When you'll be talking about how to answer interview questions, you will see this point come alive. And then, of course, professional impression. Because when you're preparing for an interview, you will be like, okay, what should I do when I'm going for an interview? What should I carry? What should I prepare? How do I answer questions? How do I sit? What is my facial expression? What are the nonverbal cues that I'm supposed to consider? All those things will come into play. And also when you master them and you've done presentation, you've done your mock interview, you've done your presentation in front of your friends, in front of your parents, in front of your loved ones, then you're able to prepare. And so you're able to give it a personal and professional touch. So one of the things that we need to do when you are called for an interview, number one, ensure you did your research for the company and the role. Some of us just sit and wait and say, you know what, I think my undergraduate was in computer science. So that means I can develop a software. So you don't even care about what the organization looks like. You don't even care what the role looks like. And you think that with your BCom, you think that you learned whatever is good enough. So you'll be able to walk into an interview and just answer questions anyhow. No. So the other thing is dressing. This one has been overemphasized, but let me just repeat it for the purpose of this conversation. I know we have generational differences, and some of us are in this generation who say that, you know what, why must I wear a tie? Why should I wear a suit in interviews? Why should I dress appropriately for the interviews? We have those conversations, and I've seen a lot of them when we are doing some interviews. Someone just comes in casually looking with dreadlocks that are unkempt and hair that is unkempt, makeup that looks like I don't know God knows what, and some dress code with some funny jeans trousers and some funny revealing tops, and you've come for a formal interview and you're like, what have you come to do? You have come for an interview for this position. Okay, first impression definitely matter. So wear appropriate attire. And when you're walking into a meeting or in an interview setup, your body come in like someone who has the confidence because you prepared for the interview. You don't need to come in timid and fearful and almost hiding behind the benches. You walk in confidently so that someone who is seeing you is seeing life out of you. You don't need to be timid over anything because you are the product that you're selling. So can you imagine if you are selling a shirt, and this shirt of yours that you're selling, you want to sell it at 1,000 shillings, and this shirt you took it and went and squeezed it and roughed it and put it in some funny things, and it is dirty, it is not, and it is unkempt, it is shaggy, and then you have someone else who has come with a very neat, clean shirt like this man that I'm wearing, very clean, neat, ironed, very well prepared, and then you're in the market and both of you are selling. As a customer, which shirt would you automatically go for? Another example that I normally use is if we are in a boardroom kind of an arrangement, and I walk in wearing an apron, a red, tattered, dirty, full of paint apron, and then someone else comes in and is wearing some decent, nice clothes, nicely ironed, stuff like that, and you are both to talk to you about career advancement, which of the two are you going to listen to? Chances are you will be inclined towards listening to the person who is smartly dressed. It happens like that in every interview. let me not lie to you that there is a level of civilization that we can dress anyhowly as you go for the interview. It's not possible. The next thing, there's like a bit of a small process here about being prepared. So and some of the things that I have just talked about, and as we continue, we will also talk about them. So you review and print your CVs, do your research, prepare a list of questions, practice interview questions. You can take a free training before, prepare yourself to go for the interview venue, clean up your social media. I will talk about that in a bit. And then of course I've talked about choosing an outfit that looks like it is presentable. And then of course we can take some small rest just to prepare. So how do we tackle interview questions? So number one, we have prepared out of the interview. We have been doing our jobs well. We have been upskilling ourselves. We have been preparing for this glorious moment. When we got the interview invite, we have been practicing on how to come to the interview. And I will say that most of companies, when they are putting out a profile for a job, they usually put up the job description. So they'll tell you who is in this meeting. They'll tell you so and so, this is what you're going to do. We are looking for a clerk who is going to do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Additionally, they also add the soft skills, the skills that are required for this job. And additionally, they also put up the competencies and say these are the competencies that you're looking for in this profile. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. In my experience, what I've seen people do is, because of our desperation, we are always in a rush to apply for the job without even looking at the profile that we are required to fulfill. So we have just seen, oh, so these guys are advertising for this position. You look at, okay, where do we apply from? Or this is the link. Okay, let me go in there. Pap, pap, pap. You click on the link, or we are sending our CV. Okay, send the CV, and done and dusted. We have applied for that job. So you feel you leave your computer saying, I have applied for 3 jobs today, without even carefully analyzing the job profile, analyzing the skills requirement, analyzing the competencies. It will be very prudent for us before applying for any job, as long as there is a job profile. Not unless there are those jobs that you have been told, send your CV ASAP. You know, some of those things come up and you're told, just send me your CV ASAP. And you don't know what the role is all about. But even so, if someone tells you, send me your CV ASAP, there's a profile here. Later, once you send your CV and the hurry is over, you can go back to them and tell them, okay, you asked me for my CV. Okay, what role are you looking at? What is the job profile? So that in the event that you're called for an interview, you also prepare in the back end, so that you don't just send your CV and hawk your CV right, left, and center, and you sit pretty waiting for you to be called for interviews. It calls for preparation. So now we have prepared, we have done our CVs, we have looked at the profile, we applied correctly, our cover letters was nicely done, our profile was nicely done. Now we've been called for the interview. Now we have been told to ask questions. Number one, as you prepare for the interview, try as much as possible to understand the question and the question types. Now, from a HR perspective, these are the kind of questions that you are going to get. Number one, you are going to ask you about what value are you going to bring to the role that you are interviewing for. So what that means is we are going to give you 2 or 3 questions about the role itself. And when you're asking you about the role itself, is the technical know-how of what the job entails. So that one, you have to have read the job profile properly well and understood it. And not just understood it, digested it, so that you see how can you respond to these technical questions. So you must have analyzed the profile and understood and read the questions properly well to know how am I going to respond to this interview. And this is going to be well when you're doing your mock interview session. So that when you're doing your mock interview session, you're asking yourself, okay, so if the recruiter is telling me my work is going to be a system developer or a software developer, so what does the recruiter basically mean? It means the recruiter is saying, do I know how to develop something? Do I know how to develop a software? Do I know how to develop a system? And so if I'm asked about developing a system, I'm supposed to know what are the key things that are required to develop a system. What are the crucial components of a system that I must consider when developing a system? What are the collaborations? Who do I need in the team so that I develop a system? What are the hiccups? What are the challenges that comes with developing a system, and how do I minimize those challenges? Number 3 or number 4 or number 5, What is the cost benefit analysis of some of these systems was developed? So that at the back of your mind, when the interviewer is asking you about developing a system, you don't just come in and say, yeah, you know, I have a bachelor's of science degree in computer science, so I am aware I can develop a system. Then you keep quiet. I mean, you have not done justice to that question. It means that you have to go and when it is a technical question, you unwrap the technical question and try to understand what exactly does this organization mean when they're asking me to be a system developer. What kind of systems does this organization wants me to develop? What are their products, and how are these systems going to feed into their products? What value proposition are these systems that I'm going to develop going to give to the employer? So that when I'm asking the interview, when I'm answering the question of a technical system development, I'm like running them through what is required from end to end in 2 minutes or probably 1.5 minutes, telling them how I can develop a system from them, and as much as possible give them examples of how I've developed a system before. Then of course that one you'll be able to do that when you're doing your mock interview. And then feedback incorporation. So I'm asked about a technical question about employment process. If I'm supposed to onboard an employee, what is the process? And tell them this is what onboarding process requires. It requires preparing an employment contract, having the employment contract signed, sharing the employment contract with the candidate, ensuring that the candidate has returned it on time, negotiate on the joining date of the candidate. Once you negotiate on the joining date of the candidate, send the candidate the forms that they are supposed to fill in as HR. Once they fill in those forms, ensure that they have returned, verify the originals from the photocopies, ensure that all documentations, the KRA pins, the NSSF, the NHIF, the degree certificate, ensure that I have seen the original and the photocopy, and I have stamped the photocopies to ensure that they are authentic. Once I have done that, I ensure that I've done what? I enroll them to the induction program. I take them to meet their head of department on the day that they are reporting. And then once you know that you have done that process, then you tell them, I remember one of the scenarios where we had to do an onboarding of 1,000 people, or an onboarding of 200 people, or an onboarding of 500 people. That solidifies your answer. It tells the interviewer that this guy knows what they are talking about, because you are relating the technical part of the question with your own experience. And someone will ask that, how can you tell me that I'm just fresh from campus and you're telling me that I need to have an experience? When it comes to a technical question and you've not had a formal kind of an organization experience, you can leverage for the other skills under projects, community service, a leadership position, the things that you've done before. For example, you remember that you were working on a project that required timelines, or you're organizing for an event for your graduate student. You can leverage on that experience and say some of these things require, as much as you're going to give a textbook answer, because it is a technical question. You can give a textbook answer because you don't have the actual requisite experience, but now use the skills that the job require from your own personal experience to answer the question. So you're saying, I remember this time when we had a project, and what were you doing in our church? We have a mentorship program for young people, and the program entailed onboarding them to a certain, these are the requirements, this is what they used to do, this is what you are required to do. You did not hire, but you have a similar experience close to what the employer is looking for, that you can leverage on and tell them, my role was to ensure that the documentation was in place. My role was to ensure that they are served drinks when they come in. My role was to ensure that the room where they are sitting is nicely organized. My role was to ensure that they keep time. Those skills are the similar skills that are required when you're onboarding an employee. You're leveraging on that experience so that you can put the point home. You can answer and pack the questions. Are you together? And so when you're preparing for the interview question, you also need to manage your nerves and build confidence. And this is killed by when you're doing the practice. You're looking at yourself in the mirror and answering those questions as if you're in a panel. So you're there asking yourself, okay, Eric, tell us about yourself, and you're alone and you're practicing and you say, okay, blah, blah, I need to say this. Then you go back and say, okay, is that the way I'm supposed to answer that question? This one helps you to acclimatize to the position even before you sit for the interview. When the first question, and let me tell you, some interviewers are they are sadists. They are very They are very intimidating. They will intimidate you with the questions they ask, the manner in which they're going to look at you. They just look like they don't like you completely. And you've never met this guy, but you've met them in an interview. But that is their personality, or rather, that is their role in that interview. So you're going to meet different interview panelists, and each of them come with different roles. So someone who is coming to show how does this guy respond to anger when this guy is intimidated, how much can they be able to tolerate the intimidation. And the other one, who mostly are HR, they're usually very soft and very welcoming and very inviting. They are those ones. Then you have the head of department, the department that you're going to be working in. They will also be able to ask you most technical questions and try to gauge your teamwork, your culture, some of things like that. So you also need to be aware that when you walk into an interview panel, for you to manage your nervousness, you have to scan through the interview panel and look at, okay, who is playing which role. I promise you, everybody plays a certain role. So when you walk in your interview panel and you sit down, you scan through and see who is playing which role, so that when someone is asking you a technical question, you're able to respond with the technicality that the question deserves. When somebody asks you a behavioral questions, a skill and competence question, you're able to see how best to respond to that. When this other one is asking you about what was your good time in life, how have you been enjoying life, you're also able to do what? To answer, but answer in wisdom. Because as they ask you about your fun experience, they're also trying to gauge, okay, what are your bad behaviors? So that they can also measure what kind of a personality we are bringing on board. And so when you do that, it helps you to reduce nervousness. Another way in which you can reduce nervousness and build confidence is an interview is number one, by taking the center stage. The first question most of the time you are asked in an interview is, tell us about yourself. What you're basically asking you is, hey, can you give us something nice about yourself? This question usually allows us to build our confidence, because we are telling them our profile. We are telling them, this is what I've done, this is me, this is my skill, this is what I enjoy. That moment is usually your moment to build confidence, to relax, to take it easy, so that now when the other questions start streaming in, you've already set the mood. But if you get the tell us about yourself question and you fumble about it, trust me, there is a high likelihood that you are not going to recover in that interview process. You are going to recover when it's too late. But when you just walk into the interview, you've built your confidence, you've done your preparation, you're walking nicely, you're dressed, you're groomed nicely, and you're sitting in that conference and you're sitting in that room, and you breathe in and breathe out, and you're relaxed, and your posture, you've sat in a certain posture that is confident, and you're not timid and you want to disappear in the seat. Already you're creating an environment that you are occupying the space. You're looking like you are someone who has life. There are some of us who walk into interviews and you even ask them, can you speak loudly? Can you add your volume? Okay, would you repeat that point? That is a turn off to most interviewers. Walk in majestically, confidently, not overconfident. If you're shaking hands, shake hands confidently. If you're able to look at someone straight in the eye, look at them straight in the eye. Not too strong, not too soft, but I would say it's the moment. And so, how do we now answer interview questions? An interesting way of doing is by storytelling. And storytelling carries the day. In fact, research says that some of the best CEOs in the world are storytellers. Everybody wants to listen to a short, nicely structured story. You'll be asked, this role requires a lot of negotiation, dealing with big partners, dealing with managers, dealing with senior managers, and sometimes it requires a lot of back and forth in terms of managing projects. Tell us how you're going to handle this kind of a situation. Able to tell them now. What I did is, number one, understanding that we had short on time. That means that you are aware of the timelines. So understanding the timelines that we have been allocated, I prepared a project timeline in advance, which I went ahead and discussed with my boss and discussed with the senior managers to get their concurrence. Secondly, quantify. The project was 100,000. The project was worth 1 million. And what that required is me collaborating with finance to ensure that the resources that are needed for this role or for this project are available. And in the event that the project was running out of funds, I was able to pre-order from finance and get the requisite approvals so that at the end of the day, our project runs successfully. At the end of the day, we were able to achieve our project within the set timelines. We are able to save. The project cost was estimated to be 100,000, but through prudence and managing the project, we were able to spend 70,000, giving a saving of 30,000. What I learned from this project is, number one, I learned to negotiate well, because I used to negotiate with management on project timelines, on budget, put teams together so that we can ensure that the project is delivered on time. So I learned about teamwork. I also learned about presentation skills, because when the project was told that I was going to run with the project, I had to do a presentation to the line managers, telling them of the project timelines on my proposed way of doing things. So I also learned about presentation. That one, already you have touched all aspects of the interview. You've given your story nicely, and everyone can see that, by the way, this guy is understanding what you are calling them to do. I'll come back to this slide. So I said I'll come back to this conversation. So how do I answer the tell me about yourself questions? And I say this is an icebreaker. It brings you to the conversation. You don't just start saying, I am a Kenyan of 32 years of age. You are not motivated to talk. I am not married. I am a Christian. I am 22 years of age. We have 5 siblings in our family. I am the last born. The employer has no need to know about that. And about where you studied, the employer already knows, and they have seen it in your CV. That is the moment to seize your moment. In fact, it's the time that you're telling them who you're really made of. And you'll do a short lineup of your academic achievement, but dwell more on your skills and competence that bring value to that role. So if you're defining about yourself, it's like trying to tell a lady, although nowadays we don't have this opportunity to woo ladies in the manner that it used to be done before, by writing serious letters. Nowadays, even a WhatsApp enough can get you a lady. But in those days, when you're supposed to do a serious presentation to a lady, telling them about yourself, using those grammars that some of us wrote when you're in high school to our sister schools, you have to say the precise things about yourself. So what that means is you have to do a skills audit. Who are you made of? What is your strength area? What is your best thing? What things are you bringing on the table? If it's negotiation skills, if it is leadership skills, if it is time management, if it is team leadership, if it is project management, you embed it in yourself so that you're selling yourself as the product. Are you together? And then, of course, you have to align it to the role that you're looking for, so that if you're looking at a system developer, you're giving us your strength and your skills in line with what the role is looking for. So you don't just tell us that I'm a good footballer. I mean, how does that help an interviewer looking for a system developer? What does football have to do with me being a system developer? You understand? But again, you also need to understand what are the skills that are required for a system developer, and how do you bring them out? And of course, highlighting your achievements. So as you tell us about yourself, you tell us, I've been able to lead teams. My last role, I had 15 people reporting into me. In campus, I was the head of CU. We had a membership of 1,000 people, and we used to have meetings. So I am a good leader. I was able to, when I was running a project in campus, I was able to run with a project, and we collected 1 million Kenya shillings for a certain community service program. When we were going to a children's home, I was in campus. I was able to mobilize people to bring them on board. So I am a good team player. I am a good mobilizer. I am a good negotiator. And these are the things that I'm going to bring on board when you give me this opportunity. But that question also allows you to work on your strength. I have mentioned through this as I've been speaking about interviews. And one method, acceptable method for most interviewers when you're doing interviews is the STAR method. And the STAR method simply says that you look at the situation, you look at the task, you look at your action, you look at the results, and you structure your responses, giving a lot of clarity to that role, giving relevant examples, and giving impactful findings. And I've tried to use this all along in all my examples. So what I'm saying is, regardless of the questions that you are asked, whether it is technical, whether it is behavioral, whether it is skills, start with a nice short story. So what that means is, when you're preparing for the interview, have your stories at your fingertips. As much stories about what you've done. When I'm doing CV reviews for most people, I usually struggle a lot to tell them, bring out what you do best. Some of us just do our CVs that look like anyhowly. neglecting all those important things that we need to have achieved, the achievements that we have done, we forget about them. We just write tasks that we have done in our previous roles. Simple task, reconciliation, I am a teller, I balance cash. That's what we most of us write in our CVs. We struggle a lot to sell ourselves. Employers already know that as a let's say as a banking teller, you're going to be balancing cash. They already know that, but they want to see what value are you bringing in the balancing of cash. Look for a situation that you can apply. So you have your stories at the tip of your mind. Balancing of finance books, or preparing books of accounts and stuff like that. You know, them, I remember one time we had a deadline of preparing a books of accounts with my boss, and which were being presented to the board. And it was urgently needed because the finance board committee was sitting that evening, and it was an abrupt meeting because of the change in strategy of the organization. That is the situation. What was the task? The task was to urgently prepare the books of accounts, and they are supposed to be delivered to the committee that was supposed to be sitting in the evening. That was the task. What was your action? Your action, you had to ensure that, number one, what is needed for us to prepare books of account. That is completely technical. So it takes you back to what do we need to do, prepare books of account. You say, okay, I had to get primary reports, I had to get the voucher book, I had to get the impressed account, I had to get blah, 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 all the sources that you need to prepare the books of account. Once I got these documents, what I needed, we were in a meeting with my boss, we analyzed what was needed, we went to the system, this is what we need to do in the system, blah, blah, blah. That is the skills, the action that you did, which corroborates with the competence that is required for that job. Then what was the results? Were you able to submit this report on time? Yes. By around 45 minutes or 1 hour to the meeting, we were able to submit the report. I was able to submit the report to my manager, I also requested for a meeting for us to review the books of accounts. They gave me a few adjustments to make which I made on time. And by around 3 or 4, we presented the report to management. You understand? That is the results. That is what you're looking for. So that when the interviewer is asking, do you understand what you're coming to do? You have simply used a STAR model to ensure that you have answered, but you're looking at what does the organization require. Always remember that every time you're answering an interview question, put yourself in what the organization require, so that at the end of the story you're telling them. Similarly, when you have such a situation, I'll be able to collaborate with the team members. I'm able to collaborate with my managers. I'm able to bring people together to be a business partner with other people, so that we ensure that all the projects that you have, and because you already did a background check on the role that you're applying for and the kind of projects that the organization is doing, you can tell them one of their products. You can tell them if their product is Linda Mama, or helping street children, or an NGO that is doing child rescue. You can tell them. In that line, I will be able to be very productive when we are looking for donor funds. I'll be able to support one of these of your line products. The interview panel will be like, yeah, clearly this guy, by the way, he has already gelled with our system. He already knows what you are doing, and how we are going to discuss about it. You will find difficult questions in an interview. I told you the interview panels has people. They are that one who is put in that interview just to give you hell of a time. You need to mark them and know how to respond to their questions. You need to scan through. You need to know who is going to throw me a question that is going to throw me off balance, because you will find them in that interview. So you need to how to handle situation and hypothetical questions, so that now when you ask that question, you listen to what does this guy really want. In all the drama that is asking me, what does he really want? Then analyze using our STAR model. Analyze, sift through in 2 seconds, sift through what this guy really wants, and of course give them a solution. If you use the STAR model, chances are you won't struggle to answer any question. But in the event that they throw you off balance and you're not able to immediately respond to their question, feel free to tell them, let me take that in advisory. Give me a few minutes. Can we proceed to the next question as I prepare my thought process to answer that one? But when you're done, you need to remember and go back to that question and respond to that question. It gives you time to prepare yourself, because you are not allowed to throw yourself off guard. You're not allowed to find yourself off guard. You have to ensure that you do what? You are well prepared. Sawa. Another thing, there's a lot of fake in interview setup. People come into the interview setup with a lot of fake. And the reason why we use STAR model is to help us to be authentic, do a positive thing, because at the end of every project, even if it was a bad experience, your role is to give out the results. You can't give a bad result, you have to give a positive result. So, and you give the evidence of what did you learn from that experience. So when you use our STAR model, regardless of the question, whether it is a positive question or a negative question, you're able to bring out a story and say, from this, I remember one day I really delayed with a project. I was not feeling very well. I tried to excuse myself, but and unfortunately I had been put to task to deliver it. And I was not able to deliver it on time. These were the repercussions. These were the learning points that I took. And this was the lesson that I took. Be as authentic as possible. Turn around the story into something beautiful and say, this is what I learned. And in the subsequent project, I was able to rise above it and provide the needed results, which saved the company cost, which saved the company time, which brought in new customers, which had a good customer experience, which made the organization shine. So once you're done with the interview questions, once you've done with the interview, you've used your STAR model, you've composed yourself, you've done your research, you've done your work, and you've gone for the interview. One of my 3 introductory statements was that however excellent you do in an interview, sometimes you may not get the job. But that does not mean that you are a failure. Once you're done, you can decide and follow up with an interview maybe 1 week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks. If you have not received any feedback, you can ask them, guys, if you have an email address, how did I fare on? And even at the end of the interview, you can ask them. If you're having an interview, most of the time at the end of the interview, the recruiter will ask you, do you have any question for the panel? No, you remember at the preparation stage, we said, prepare your questions that you may want to answer. Because you've been profiling this company, you looked at their products, you've looked at their projects, you've looked at what their value is, you looked at what they are doing, and you are interested in what they do really. And so you might have 1 or 2 questions just to show them that, by the way, I have been in your business in a positive way. And so you need some clarity about something. You can ask in that presentation. Most of the time they'll tell you how soon they'll get back to you. So you may not need to ask them about how soon. If they have not disclosed to you about salary, if you are confident enough, you can ask, but you have to be very wise about how you ask the salary package and the benefits. You can ask, by the way. Ask for feedback in that platform. Tell them, how did I fare in the interview? They can give you some insightful tips to show you whether you failed that interview already, or probably there are areas that you may need to improve on, or probably that you did well in that interview, and probably they'll call you for the next interview. You can ask. Once you're out of the interview, you can sit. Some of us don't go asking for feedback or reviews, but you can go back and ask them, how did I fare? Then you can also reflect and learn. Look back and do a recap. How did I perform in that interview? What questions did I fumble? Where did I do well? Okay, keep your spirit high. And of course, continuous improvement is very important. So there's a slide here I skipped here about emerging trends in hiring. It should be the last one, but it's here as I conclude. So emerging trends. Sometimes the numbers of people apply for jobs are so many, yet the company is only looking for so little. So what happens is, emerging trends is there is a lot of digitization and technological advancement when it comes to preparing CVs. Most companies use systems to sieve out CVs. And for you to be sieved out, it means you have not structured your CV to fit the profile that the organization is looking for. So even before they go far, they just run the system and see with their ATS system compliance, they see skills match. Okay, how many people meet our technical competence? 3. Okay, how many people meet our behavioral competence? 4. How many people meet our academic qualification? 5. Only those ones are the ones who are going to be picked. All the others whose CVs are not ATS compliant and the system is not able to put them together are going to be told, we regret to advise that we are not going to shortlist you for this position. However, you can be checking up those political statements that we HR is to give everyone. So what that does mean? That means that we have to ensure that our CVs are nicely crafted. We have to craft our CVs to fit the profile that we are applying for. If you have time when you are applying for a job, go into your computer, search for skills for that role. What role am I applying for? I'm applying for a manager role. okay, so this manager role, what are the skills that mostly people look for in this job? Then cultivate your CV to fit that skill, so that when the employer is running your CV on the system, the skills that they are looking for will pop out. The experiences that they are looking for will just pop out. So already that gives you an upper hand to when it comes to shortlisting. Number 3, employers also want to know what kind of a person am I hiring. So social media has become a very important tool. Some of us have never updated our LinkedIn profiles. So you ensure that your social media platform is nicely is presentable. If you're on professional sites like LinkedIn, nowadays most employers even ask you for your LinkedIn profile when you're applying for a job, because they run through to see what kind of a candidate am I looking for, what kind of a candidate is this, so that when they find you with some funny photos looking anyhowly, and it's a corporate job that you're supposed to be dealing in corporate matters, it becomes a bit of a challenge, isn't it? And then another very important thing is the skills for the future. Skills for the future. It is very important as a candidate, as we prepare for our interviews, we know what are the skills for the future, so that when I'm going to an interview to discuss about finances, I am aware that in the next 2 or 3 years, this is what is going on in the world of finance. If I'm going to do a system developer, I am aware that this and this and this are the emerging trends in software development. These are the customer needs that are needed, so that the companies are going to shift from preparing dealing with people to dealing with robots. Understand the skills that are required for the future, so that when you're applying for that job, when you're answering those interview questions, you are also reflecting, you are aware of the dynamic nature of the world, of globalization, of the impact of COVID, and how the organizations are going to adapt in the future, so that you can bring them to your profile. It shows that you are an forward-looking person, because you're not just employing for today. An employer is employing you to sit there for the next 10 or probably 5 or 50 or 20 years. So you need to be aware of the skills of the future and know. Up to that point, I will stop there.